Okay, I'm going to try to keep this one fairly straightforward. I have a top 10 reasons or list that I've cultivated here. I'll give my perspective. Each of us should maybe look at these things in our own individual life. But when it comes to things we may want to add to our life, reevaluate, here's a top 10 list for things to think about with regards to that. Okay, so we want to change how we're thinking about things. And if we can go from being a victim of the New World Order or of the Matrix or of this political party, Antifa being a victim of the left, being a victim of Trump, being a victim of the Republicans, white people, black people, Middle Eastern immigrants, victim, victim, victim. There's a lot of people out there that have been programmed with some very toxic belief systems that have taken them almost completely out of body. Now, when that happens, well, it can be argued you can possess a segment of the alive human population with falsehoods. Once you get them in such a state of fear, an altered state of reality. So, first and foremost, our head should be screwed on. You want to unplug from the matrix? Kind of hard to do that watching Fox News full time. Kind of hard to do that watching CNN full time. Kind of hard to do that on YouTube all day long, just watching whatever YouTube suggests that you watch. That's not exiting the matrix at all. That's being programmed. So that could be something that I can expand on for a whole hour, right? We can come back to this. We can make a volume set out of this. But no, this isn't going to be like, an AA meeting per se. But you know what? When it comes to working the steps, if you will, in other self improvement systems, people do their own inventory, for example, right? So let us think about doing our own inventory. What are the things that we need to clean up with regards to our own thoughts? And what is it that you may be able to say positively about yourself right now and your abilities, as opposed to thinking something negatively about someone else? What can you say positively about yourself and your abilities or your gift of communication? And I think that's where a lot of us need to align with our own truth. And that is where our strongest truth is. It's identifying what your own truth is. Okay, so coming to the next one, right? There's a lot of different reasons why a person may consider travel. I can't really recommend off grid living for everyone because that's too specific. That would be my expression of the geographical relocation. I also happen to believe in a person throughout their entire life moving from place to place and learning different things from their experiences, because I think that different places on the planet feel different ways during different times. We may even find ourselves moving in search of something better, only to find greater challenges. We might be a yin and a yang, a mix of positive challenges and negative challenges. It's important to have the wisdom to see the difference. So consider travel. And of course, with that would come, of course, a change in a work situation. You may be in a work situation in a part of the planet, residing somewhere that is not working for you. And in the same way that you put out your intention and your determined will to get that job, to put in that application and be accepted by that corporation to be able to rent where you're renting, in the same way that you put out the same will and belief that you were able to achieve that. Other things are possible as well with the same drive and belief. I think that certain things we have the ability to affect in this reality, certain things we can't. I think there's a lot of fluff in the law of attraction movement. I think there's some things we're even missing. In certain ways, people are negatively creating their own reality that should be talked about. Like the opposite, where they're like creating like bad things for themselves by not understanding how thoughts work. Something could be said about that. So travel can bring new insight, and it can help us do that work within, because ultimately we have to do the work within. I think that I was driven subconsciously out of motivation for some sort of soul retrieval or soul healing when I found myself at all places in Costia County. And why? And why there? And why do I see myself as grateful to God, to the Creator, that I was there in 2013 before they did their crackdown? Because I went to a place on the earth that was silent. It was there where I can feel the silence. Yes, I was off the internet. I wasn't able to speak to my own audience on YouTube, And it was very frustrating with not even any AdSense at the moment, and not really a lot of support, but I was meant to go through that rough and tough winter, survive because it brought out something within. It almost brought, as I called out to it, my soul or my spirit, and or both, and so much more elements of my body, as I started to consciously seek healing from all past traumatic things. I'm thinking back to the winter 4 years ago, 5 years ago at this moment. For those that don't know, 5 years ago. That was a very intense time. There was a reason why I began to travel during that period, and why I went from urban to with nothing but literally the stuff in my car, not even an RV. I went out to the coldest place in Colorado without knowing it was the coldest place in Colorado. I don't know what I was seeking to find there, as I try to create my own rite of passage situation as a male, a little older than some males in the past, for them to go out. It's not like I was out hunting, but just leaving the urban society for months on end. That's something that most men don't do, and it's frowned upon by this society. And it's something that some things can be learned about ourselves. And it was in that experience that I wrote that PDF that you see at the link down below. I wrote that during my first off-grid experience 4 months in. And a lot of the information that was compiled together, in which I had the focus to connect those dots, I've had the focus to sit down and focus just on that project since that off-grid experience, my first Costia experience. So to me, it's a part of history. Going to the next area of conversation, number 3. Now, I'll try to be brief with these, and I can come back and expand on these. Bringing meditation back into your life. And for a lot of us, especially in this day and age with the monkey mind, we jump from topic to topic, issue to issue. And it's because of how we, have learned to deal with this world and manage different things and responsibilities. We also get used to having different entertainment sources. So the idea of calming the mind in the face of a storm is something that's just very, very alien to a lot of people. By the way, I'm going to probably be playing that clip from Little Buddha. I mentioned that earlier. That's right. And he's going through stages of meditation. Maya, the god of illusion, is throwing lust at him, praise at him, and threatening behavior at him to prevent the Buddha from raising his own frequency. That is a great analogy for what many human beings alive today are going through. So we'll come back to this, but you can set a goal for the day, right? And that's going back to the thinking, and I'll just throw that in now, setting goals for the day. Simple goals for the day, small goals for the day. You're going to shift to something higher in your understanding. You're going to understand something that you didn't understand before, but simply stated here, to be able to sit down on the grass outside and breathe in deep, visualizing, new ideas and energy coming in and breathing out, releasing old energy, releasing old ideas, releasing programming, breathing in, breathing out, going from deep breathing to just letting your breath flow naturally and getting to a very calm state, non-reactive state. Learn about these things on your own. Develop tools. Those tools are out there. The trick is believing in your tools working for you. Go out there and develop tools that can help you navigate this matrix. There's things that I've shared, but I don't know it all. I'm still in a state of learning and growth. But there are tools out there, and even invoking certain particular deities. I think there's a reason why a lot of people are feeling called, at least, to Jesus at this time, even though there's different perspectives on Christianity and Gnosticism and spirituality in general. And there is an ongoing duel, if you will, between the battles of atheism, and those that believe in the world of spirit. And that is diverse as well. So that should be noted. But I don't think that's an accident that a lot of people right now are looking for answers, simply stated. Or maybe they're sounding religious in their videos. We may not agree. We may not even think that other people are authentic when they talk about these things. We may even find ourselves under attack when we talk about freeing other souls from this matrix. That is very eerie to go through that. But what I can see on YouTube and throughout the internet, I am not alone. I may feel alone where I live in the off grid lifestyle that I chose. But ultimately, thanks to the internet, my ability to look things up and look up what's happening to others, I know that I'm not alone. And that puts things in perspective. Sometimes we need to sit down and meditate and breathe in that new energy to have the insight or the knowledge or the clarity of sight to even look up certain things on the internet that then take us to another level of consciousness. So it becomes like this loop of positive energy moving and purging out the negative and the old. Okay, moving on. Diet. Okay, so changing our diet. And sometimes it happens, our body may go through shifts in energy. And I don't endorse all the other views that other people share in the mainstream New Age community regarding energy shifts and their effects on the body, but there is some crossover. There are some things that's just innate common sense that some people do latch onto in some of their writings and postings online. So, and I would do say that I do feel that there is something about our bodies adapting and seeking to become healthier and adapting to a world with less of a dependency on meat, if you will, right? And some of us may encounter certain periods in which we really do believe that we are able to go without less. And I understand I'm not perfect because I'm not a vegan and I haven't denounced all meat eaters. Um, However, does my body feel like over time that it's adapting to a lifestyle that has far less meat in it than, say, a lifestyle in which, if I was living in the grid with a fridge in an apartment in the city with a market down the street? Oh, yeah, I'd be consuming far more animal products. Not so much in the current situation where my trips to the market are spread out. And I'm ordering extra quinoa. Actually, I did yesterday, about 12 pounds that I'll be receiving uh, next week in the mail. In fact, it's already shipped. So I think about where I may be in the coming weeks and months, or I'm not planning necessarily to go vegan all the way. If I was in a situation where I don't get to go to the store for weeks on end, or heaven forbid, months on end, I'm looking at a situation where I'm going incrementally, almost completely vegan on a mostly quinoa diet. And I need to really expand on some other things. But I do see a connection between cleansing our body and cleansing our mind. And I do see a connection with toxic thoughts at times, painful thoughts at times, traumatic, energetic feelings, and the trauma that the animals went through that we consume. When we look in our society, we look at life today, we see a very unempathetic society. We see a very apathetic society. And it's not just from what people are consuming. There are other things, and I would throw in cell phone towers and the many cell phones that people are holding on their bodies, that it too is having an impact on their consciousness and bringing them out of a balanced brainwave state or brain state or healthy state. And there may be some of you with cell phones, they have them with you all the time and you've maintained your consciousness, but I would consider you the minority of the population if that is so. With the rest of the individuals, we have the programming, media programming, cell phone addiction, and addiction to certain foods that are not healthy for us. I do believe those things hold down our frequency and that we can go higher. They give us a lot of things for free to keep us in a low state of frequency. We'll end at that note. All right, number 5, exercise. There's going to be certain periods in which it's good to get exercise. I mentioned this in my solar flare presentation. You can look at recent videos in which I went over that again. You may have an interest in martial arts. You may have an interest in meditation. You may have an interest in hiking, backpacking, physical things. But you may not notice that your interest in those particular things may go up when there's an increase in geomagnetic storms. And the scientific reasoning behind this is the changes in your hormonal state and other states of your physical being, even your brain. Science, to a certain degree, has acknowledged the changes to the human body and psychology, even stats connecting suicides to the geomagnetic storm, but they don't necessarily connect health and fitness fads and increased aggression in males. And I think that the increased aggression in males, and this would include also how people treat each other online, not just actual fights out in the street. The internet in the last several decades for the current generation has provided another arena for people to exercise their aggressions in a non-physical way, but a solely verbal way, where it's done in a digital. Let me turn off this battery pack. And yes, the sun is coming out today. We will be having power here shortly, and I will have all the power from the sun, free energy, if you will, to do everything that we need. So, ending my point on exercise. There's certain periods in which we're filled with extra energy, and it could be caused by certain things like geomagnetic storms or other things. We should go with it and channel or express that energy in a mindful way. A lot of the problems that people have, emotional, physical disputes, and other things, is a misuse of energy or inability for some people to deal with their own stuff, and it comes out sideways. And a lot of people don't think about things like stuff being caught up in their auric field or things causing them to become angry and agitated. So they're not on a path of self healing, they're on a path of going mad. Right now on earth, there's opportunity for those of us on the growth path to live alongside these individuals that are going on the downward slope. So these are things to think about. That exercise is a very good thing with regards to mental health and well being, and psychic protection. For myself, I've always really enjoyed certain ways of training, and I'm trying to break out of certain ways of looking at things and just changing things up just to be general, just for the sole purpose of snapping out of structure and to be in a creative state to where my right brain, my creative side, is on board. It's not just a left brain exercise. But to give you an example, I'm off grid now, so I'm not near any urban area where I can be part of a gym. One of the cool things of going to a gym is being able to lift free weights and be able to say do a bench and work on your weight, and maybe focus on certain body parts with certain machines, and then to be able to come back to that workout a week later or 3 to 4 days later and hit it again. And we may do that for most of our lives, and we may avoid certain things like I always have. I've always avoided like daily push-ups or things like that, or working out the whole body, a whole body workout where it's more about toning and it's less about thinking about bulking up. And being in a real high muscle anaerobic, anabolic, I guess, state, aerobic, where you just it's more energy and less about sheer power. It just seems that since I've moved to this elevation of 7,000 feet, 8,000 feet, higher endurance, giving me more attention to things like that that I've neglected throughout most of my life, um, has been coming more into my consciousness as the body literally responds is responding. My body is responding over time too, physiologically, to being where I am here. And that can be a positive thing, or that can be a less than positive thing if I'm not balanced, you see? And I'm starting to realize that. So like when you're in your game or whatever, in a state of good health, it can be very, very, very good. But when someone's not, for example, if I'm chain smoking cigarettes at this elevation, it chokes off a certain amount of oxygen to the brain, of course, which thus affects the heart and thus affects the overall body system. And I become increasingly sensitive to those types of changes as well. So what I've looked at, of course, is just a shift from what I was doing and certain beliefs about certain things and certain exercises right? Certain exercises that perhaps I've never really wanted to do, and changing my attitude about those things and seeing exercise itself as something that is really tied into a holistic system of greater health of mind, body, and spirit. A lot of people exercise and working out, specifically including martial arts and MMA, is about competition and fighting and who wins. It's not about being healthier overall, much less a healthy spirit. That's clear. That may use martial arts or exercise along with healthy food and meditation for a healthier way of life. So I feel a need to express that as well. Bringing exercise into our life, and especially bringing some exercise into your life if you're not doing anything at all. As simple as doing certain exercises with your hands that relate to the chakras in the hands, moving back and forth. This is an old practice in Tai Chi. You might also see practitioners of psychic protection teach you that exercise to bring up your energetic field. I believe that I brought you a video at one point from 1983 in which that was shown. So remember, this stuff goes back to ancient India and China. So, number 6, reading outside of Kindle, reading outside of a PDF on a computer, but reading books, absorbing yourself in knowledge and information, going from one topic to another, reading about other people's stories, having an interest in things across the planet, not just in your own city or state, having an interest in things beyond this day and age, having an interest in history. I don't really read a lot of fiction, but I believe that books can jump out to us, literally, like jump out to us, that we can literally find information if we're looking for it. And that can happen. It's happened for me. I'm here to testify to that. And for others, I'm sure I'll get an amen. But for those of us that have gone to the thrift stores with the intention of finding books that we need to find, I've had that experience. And I can look behind me at my bookshelf, which it means something. Not so much the books that are there, but there's a meaning behind it. And part of it isn't just the ordering of the books or the fact that they're there in a Kemp way and not all over the floor like books might be when I was traveling in my RV, so it represents stability. But it's also the many books that I've found and have handpicked in the last year or year and a half that seem to be stretching outward to different realities. So, building up a variety of different spiritual books from around the world, and some of which I haven't read yet. And I figure one day, if the grid really does go down and there's no access to the internet, books are going to be up there, especially any how to books. And I'm thinking about some first aid books. I'm thinking about some off the grid books. I'm thinking about some human psychology books. I've already been buying incrementally a number of books on psychic protection and self defense. One of them was written in 1930 before the age of the internet. Before the internet was able to bring people together, there were people that were discovering certain phenomena that were looking at it and human psychology from a different perspective than even the dumbed down way in which human psychology is viewed today. And it is very dumbed down with the amount of people they have on psychotropic and other medications, and people thinking that they need to be medicated for issues that really may be more of a supernatural um, level, supernaturally sourced, than something just simply in their mind. So science hasn't really caught up with a greater reality of what humans amongst us have been looking at for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So how does one learn about these things and really understand on a deeper level that a documentary film in 2 hours cannot show them? A book. A book that takes days to finish. And just the very act, one woman was saying in one of her videos, the female whose lecturer was speaking from her bedroom in the UK, the act of reading is good for the consciousness or protecting one's psyche or spirit. Uh, to be in a state where you're not distracted, because we live in a world where they want to distract us and drain our energy. The parasites of this dimension in which we live in, of this matrix, the Agent Smiths of this world that sometimes manifests our own real human friendships and relationships. That's right. So we have to return to things like reading, maintain that inquisitive mind within. There's so much one can learn from the never-ending story, but a lot of that symbolism was over. And we want to ultimately avoid the nothingness. And the nothingness state can be described today as the YouTube zombie that literally is just watching. Take no offense, please. But no one should be letting YouTube decide what you watch and what you don't watch. Remember who your favorite YouTubers are. Check out their channel when you want to check them out. Things aren't just about what the YouTube algorithm and the feed shows you. Remember to visit people's websites and not just let it go on autopilot. But that's tying in with the other suggestion to really be mindful about what you watch, which I've already been placing a lot of emphasis on. From now, we might as well segue to staying in a learning mindset when you're watching. Stay out of this zombie mindset, right? And be in a mindset of watching, right? Learning from the things that you're watching, not watching something because it's entertainment or that being the only reason, but actually being benefiting from the video that you're watching, benefiting from the time and energy that you're giving particular YouTube channels, because that's what this is about. That's also why I feel a responsibility to occasionally report on the current events. How I do it, and in the proper context, has always been important to me. But there's a time and a place to talk about certain things. And right now, in this moment, there's a mindfulness we need to apply to not only what we watch, but for a guy like me, what we upload. Okay, so for other people, including myself, some things I'm just waiting for the right friends to maybe teach me how to paint with a paintbrush, or certain things to build a home, to build a shed. And for the first time in my life, a little later than normal, but I don't believe that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. So breaking into a new project in which you have to utilize a new part of your brain, which is where I was going to go next, into writing. And I would consider this one basically on number 8 out of the 10. With writing, you're utilizing a certain perspective of your brain that is not being utilized when you're simply typing. I personally see the benefit of both, and I'd like to be in a disciplined state to where, I'm working on certain writing projects more than video or alongside video, in which I may be expressing myself through a jam session of just, a lot of, and I have very fast typing ability, so I can do transcription at a pretty fast rate for a human, just in general. But the writing ability brings out another side of my creativity, and it takes a little longer, so there's a little bit more thought, right? And so there's a benefit to the typing ability, transcribing thought really quickly, being less creative, more left brain, and just computing that way. But there's another part of our brain that would be better suited to express itself with a pen and away from the radiation of the computer. On the note of the radiation from the computer, something that I've been incorporating into my life about a week ago for the first time in my life was having a Himalayan salt lamp on most of the time. It's not on at the moment because I have things plugged in here in the morning, but throughout the winter, when possible, it brings a sense of light into my life that was really missing when I just had I have an LED lantern, which you've seen me hold in the past. Not very good on my eyes. But here I have a Himalayan salt lamp, very good in my eyes, and maybe even something that I can write in the dark over this fall or winter with that lamp. So, yes, that's a major shift from writing by hand or just doing videos all the time to writing by hand. And yeah, that can definitely bring us maybe even closer to that inner voice or inner spirit that may be distracted by other things. That was the key in bringing that out. By accessing certain parts of the brain, we can spark something. Now, what I mean by that and how you can take that is up to you. Okay, water. Number 9, water. Water and liquids. Okay, so a lot of people are addicted to coffee, myself included. even tea, caffeinated tea, caffeine of different types, sodas. It was drinking soda with that particular acid that led to that infection of the tooth, of which I've healed from that infection of the tooth, and I have a dental appointment set for November of later this year, later in the month. And so by changing certain things, and there is things that we can learn, right, about tooth infections that we can learn in our own life. Sometimes you need to change something that really just should not be because there's an infection. So soda alongside a cracked tooth, not a good combination. Not a good, do not recommend it. We also want to look at other things. So there's a documentary that I was fascinated um, to watch, and I should probably find it again next time I download my next documentary. And it's called Water. And I believe it was made in Europe. And they were featuring interviews with Russian scientists and others, not just focusing on the hidden messages on water, Emoto, and how our thoughts can actually influence the molecular shape of water crystals down to a subatomic level. This has been something that has been looked at for many, many years. So water is important. Water is sacred. Our body is mostly made up of water, as we know. Our thoughts, one of the ways that our thoughts could be impacting each other, not just our brains, but the water filled bodies, the water based bodies of other humans. This seems to be related to the conduit nature of the transmitting, receiving reality that we are experiencing. And there is a transmitting and receiving of thoughts between each other, even those of us may be sharing thoughts. And sometimes that may feel scary to certain people. It's just important that we work on keeping our thoughts healthy and not letting ourselves be controlled or boxed in to reactionary emotions like anger, fear, and desire. Those three in particular, anger, fear, and desire. There are circumstances and events in our lives that are designated to trigger anger, fear, and desire. That would be jealousy. Oh, look at what he has. Look at what she has. Look at she's with him. He's with her. There are various ways in which our biology, our body, on the lower animal side, the unconscious, unspiritual, unevolved side, is wired to be in that reactionary, animalistic side. And technological addiction with a lack of spirituality to balance it out is driving some humans amongst us mad. And it's something that we have to be on the watch for to make sure that it doesn't happen to us because it can. So water is important. I see, the changes in my own self on certain days. And some periods we may not want to be drinking a lot of coffee or tea. And some days it might be a decent thing. We have to remember water is important. Um, I don't do lectures to people about what they do in their private lives with regards to substances. But on a general note, just since we are on the topic, I've never been a fan of alcoholism. I've never really had great times at bars and places like that, or with other people drinking a lot of alcohol. It's always really resulted in some heated discussions because I'm passionate, anyways, about particular views, misunderstandings. Some people can be very angry under the influence of alcohol when presented with general spiritual views about the soul evolving. Something almost seems to get into people, right? There almost seems to be an agenda to box me into an argument with certain people when it comes to. So generally, um, I don't have a lot of positive things to say about the alcohol culture, including how a lot of people need alcohol for a lot of men and women to have a sexual experience between them. I can think about a lot of things in my own past. Don't need to get into details where it's absolutely necessary for us to go to the bar for a minimum of 5 beers, and then maybe we can have a conversation about being relaxed enough with each other to actually make some bodily contact. Um, what a world, right? I do think there's got to be a world out there where things come naturally to the general consensus mass reality without alcohol being involved. How about just some water? Nice little walk by the river. All right, last but not least, relationships. So again, we're talking about um, shifting our consciousness, right? Going with the shifts, the tide, if you will, and not being pulled down by the negative things in this world. How are we going to evolve if our partner isn't at the same level? How are we going to evolve if we're speakers and I'm a speaker and we're presenting information, if we base our own value, whether or not we have a partner or not, or a wife or recognition? We have to go beyond that matrix. So there's different ways or different things to bring up regarding relationships, but ultimately we're talking about independence. I wouldn't take it to a level of complete, hey, there's no point in relationships or sexuality. That's taking it to another level of which I'm not necessarily debunking. I think there's a time and a place for us to live certain lifestyles to where dating is not at the forefront of our reality. That's where I've been for some time. But we're not conforming to particular standards to serve our own sexuality or lust, where we arrest that part of ourselves, if you will. And I started putting out the mantra within myself for my sexuality to be upgraded 5 years ago. The same way that New Agers talk about a DNA upgrade, I believe in the power to reprogram my senses. And it took a while. Um, I think I'm still on the path. It's a day to day thing, but debate where the main focus is your life path. Now, if someone else is attracted to that, that's fine, right? But ultimately, I've said this before. A lot of people that have been on unique spiritual paths have found themselves alone. And it's almost seemed necessary for them to focus on their work. And I just want to keep my commentary on that really simple, in the sense that just like everything else that I said here, and I've shared with you my own views, every category that we just went down the line, you need to find out what works for you. So it's not one going their own way in some cases. For others, it may be a relationship at that moment in time. I'm just speaking to the idea of change. Sometimes a change is needed. Sometimes people find each other and they go on to do some great things together for a period in time. And the next epoch or cycle, that ironically might even be chasing the solar cycle. And the maximum will come around and it'll shake up the energy, and boom, relationship no more. They may not even understand what's going on and all the emotional turmoil. And then their lives are changing to something else. That's why I keep coming back to these solar cycles. Something to throw into the category of read something. Read my PDF. If you'd like to read the PDF for free, right? Let me know. Find a way to contact me. Um, and I'm sure we can get that to you if it's just simply an issue of, and it's not perfect. It's going to be a work in progress. And I think about the various things that I want to do, right, while I'm still in the body: films to make, books to write, cities to travel to in the United States before things get really crazy, all over America, as well as having um, a lot of new friends in my life next year, moving forward from that. But in order to even be in a place where I can receive any of those things or manifest any of those things, we've got to shift out of the energy field that we've been molded into from the last cycle. And we need to find a way to reset. So I'm going to go over all this, and I'll leave you with these things to think about what it means for you. So changing our thoughts where we started, the right affirmations, getting out, also the negative self-talk, as well as pulling away from um, the videos that are not serving you, and certain ways of thinking that are not serving you, ways in which we've been programmed by our parents, by this world. Traveling when you need to. Understand that your environment may have shaped your brain to be in a particular state of consciousness by actually traveling somewhere else, living somewhere else for a period of time. You may experience a positive shift in perception. Likewise, also a negative. Meditation. Find a meditation that works for you. There's many ways in which you can do this. It may take many years for you to be on the path of finding what works for you. Diet, changing your diet, looking at the energetic benefits of a world with less dependency on certain things. using the reference of animal products, even though I'm not a meat eater, but letting people know it is on my consciousness. Um, how important it is for someone to be able to go with less and to be less dependent on the grocery store, for that to be in their focus. And for me, being an off-gridder, where sometimes I may be weeks or months where I'm at, I need to be able to psychologically be in a state to where my cravings are not going to be causing me sufferings. Okay, because it's not common for people to be on the kind of diet that I may, be on for an extended period of time if they're in a city. There's also a lot more to learn. Okay, going over exercise, changing your methods of exercise, what it is you're doing, cross training, realizing that's good for your brain to change things up, and maybe even changing things up to exercising the same body parts every day or doing something different if your body's going through an energy shift. Reading books, expanding your mind, the act of reading, good for the brain, good for the eyesight as well. Didn't mention that. Good for the retina to take a break from looking at a flat screen all day long. Writing, writing, utilizing that part of the brain, sharing things that you wouldn't necessarily want to share on Facebook, realizing, of course, that writing is one of the oldest traits of humanity. So there's something on a deeper level that connects us to spirit when we're writing, and maybe our higher selves. That's why there's a lot of books on intuitive writing, writing from your higher self. Relationships, sometimes we should embrace new relationships and friendships. Other times we need to step back as we're going through this shift because it is not something for the other person. And I'm just going to be general. I'm not going to tell people how to live their lives. But for a lot of people, for a lot of us, for us to fully be in our own power and when we're on the period of growing, and there may be something waiting for us later in life when we get up to a certain place on the hill, metaphorically speaking. But as we literally trek up the hill in our own evolution, we may be in a situation where we can't be dealing with excess weight or distraction, which can be a weight. It can pull us away from that which we need to do to climb up the hill. So it's all a matter of perspective. Water, drinking more water. I didn't mention putting salt in the water. I didn't mention letting the water get hit by the sun, but that's something that I want to add as well as we think about less alcohol in our lives. Unless you're like me and you basically turned away from any alcohol consumption. If you smoke marijuana, thinking about less marijuana in your lives and not letting marijuana be something to take you away from being aware of anything going on in the reality. Yeah, I don't denounce the smoking of marijuana. Have I met many pot smokers on the road or in Colorado that are not interested in larger awareness? Most of the time. Most of the time. So that's the complication. So with substances and things like that, obviously in moderation, that's back to diet, but drinking lots of water, preferably in glasses, and returning to a natural state and keeping even tea and coffee addiction in check. Last but not least, and again, I'm just going through this top 10 list, launching into something new like an art project. I'll add in musical instruments, a lot of things, that people may commonly use to describe something that activates the human body and the human creativity. And these are different things to think about. So these are things, just each category to know. And if you want to add a category and expand on that, leave a comment down below. Thank you for listening.